Hi, hello. If you're new here, my name is Rain. If you're not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate you stopping on by to my little corner of the internet. And in today's video, I am going to be fully rendering the rest of my Eurydice piece. I posted a little glimpse of her on Tumblr and one of my Instagram stories, and so this is going to be kind of my full rendering process. I know it's kind of long, so if you are able to take the time to watch it all the way through, I would really appreciate it. I promise the final outcome is totally worth it. And I also structured today's video to be a little bit more of a kind of real-time render with me. The only stuff that I cut out were the points in the video where I had just been doing literally nothing, fumbling with pens, changing my YouTube video off to the corner, or drawing completely out of frame, which I do a couple of times. So it is kind of a slow, casual video. I didn't speed anything up like I usually would. Speed things up to like 1.25 if it's taking a while. I thought that just having something kind of chill, casual would feel pretty good. And then I did make a mistake that I went and fixed off camera, but it really didn't take more than 5 minutes to fix, so we'll go over it. But it's not sped up and it's going to be pretty real time, so it might have pretty long chapters in this video, and the chapters that I will make will be based on what I'm talking about, since I will just be chunking away at colors throughout the entirety of the video. So with all of that being said, yeah, if you have the time to watch all the way through, I would really appreciate it. If you have any thoughts along the way and you're into commenting, that would be super rad. I love to chat with you guys. And finally, if you draw along with me, I would love to see what you guys do. Feel free to tag me, tell me about it in the comments, all of that fun stuff. And with that, let's get into discussing Eurydice and why I made this illustration. So as you can see off to the left side, I have some sketches of Hypnos, his new design, his or their new design for Hades 2. And I was kind of sketching out a bigger drawing of him, and I just really was hating it. I wasn't feeling it at all. And so I kind of just took paint pen to it. I was trying to cover it so that I could start over on a different background color, see if that kind of fixed it, but my pen started dying and I just kind of, I don't know what came over me. I started just chunking out splotches all over the actual kind of page. I'll show kind of the process of where I was actually going to leave this drawing before it even got to the point we're at in this video, where it was just a super messy sketch. This drawing took me about 3 days of chunking away at it here and there, so it was really rough when I left it to dry the first night, and this was day 2, or day 2 was getting it to the point we're at right now. Day 3 was finishing the entire rendering process. And so originally, when I was actually chunking out the colors and really working my way through the process of formulating this, I was actually really thinking about making this a drawing of Medusa before she was cursed by Athena, I believe. If I'm wrong, I'll make a tab to like put the name on screen, but I'm pretty sure it was Athena that cursed Medusa. And I was leaning towards Medusa, but I just have such a strong affinity for horns, and while dryads are not considered the like direct one-to-one to satyrs, and satyrs were traditionally speaking exclusively male in biology, I kind of found that dryads and nymphs in general just lean more towards, by the way, on screen is Jekyll, lean towards being the closest equivalent in Greek myth to satyrs and stuff of that nature. And so in particular, I was really liking the green kind of theme to it, and thinking about what nature, wow, I'm totally blanking. What nature, dryads, nymphs, I guess dryads are nature nymphs, which ones I do know about. I figured that creating and designing Eurydice and forming it to look a little bit more like her and less like Medusa as I had originally planned was a lot more appropriate with where I was going with the drawing. And I've been kind of wanting to branch out into non-god characters when it comes to my kind of modern mundane environment series, kind of explore some other myths, and also I've had a discussion with one of my MFA teachers so far, and I really want to talk about it with you guys. And this is also kind of leaning into where I was kind of going mentally with that overall kind of concept. So Eurydice is where I wanted to go with it so that I could make Odysseus if I felt like it. I would have to draw an instrument, so I'm kind of 50-50 on if that'll happen anytime particularly soon. But I would like to eventually make Odysseus. Oh, his name is pronounced Odysseus, right? It might be Orpheus. I get those two mixed up super strong. Really sorry. They're the same person in my brain. I think it's actually Orpheus, though. But I think it would be really cute to make Orpheus facing, either facing Eurydice, so she's glancing away and he's looking at her, or so that they're like kind of back to back, glancing over their shoulder at each other. I think that would be super, super cute. They would be such a good dictive together. So cute. And I think the style very much fits the general kind of feeling of the two of them as characters. So I very much like this as my kind of initial foray into kind of exploring Eurydice as a character, kind of thinking a little bit more about her, how I would want to characterize her within my kind of universe of gods and not so godly characters, but also because in my discussion with my MFA professor, she suggested that I continue pushing myself to further explore my passion for kind of recharacterizing gods and characters of Greek myth in the kind of modern society, and I go through the process of kind of exploring those dynamics and how I want to characterize them further beyond just the actual designing of the character. And she said she could very much see me with my art style making a zine, except she pronounced it zine, and honestly, I've never thought about it before, so I don't actually know if it's zine or zine. Debate it as you please if you need. I'm gonna probably use them interchangeably though, because I've heard it both ways, and now I'm paranoid. So, she said she could very much foresee me making a zine, and that my kind of end product for maybe a couple of terms of my MFA would be a small, like 10 to 20 page zine and of just my Greek characters, but she was leaning more towards like treating it like a chapter of like a webcomic almost, and kind of trying to treat each semester of my MFA as kind of creating a comic discussing kind of the relationships between my characters and things like that. And I very much do like my original characters, and I do kind of lean towards a more one-shot format when I think about the situations they get themselves into and the dynamics they have. Sure, I have a much broader plot in my mind for their entire universe, but I'm not necessarily ready or at a place where I could or even want to really go through the process of completely going through and drafting that story multiple times over between first edit to what will probably be 10 edits to make sure the story flows well, and then illustrating it. And I think that while the environments and the overall setup I have with them is very strong character-wise, it would benefit me to practice and kind of explore their characters more in a one-shot, kind of one-off chapter kind of format before I actually even consider committing to any sort of bigger project exploring my characters and everything of that nature. So I definitely have to think about how they fit in with each other and how I want to go through the process of thinking about it. But I have quite a few stories for my OC Hypnos and Thanatos, and their kind of childhood and their relationship with each other. I think they're probably my two favorite OCs to draw the relationship between. I almost did a full comic of them a long, long time ago, back probably in my third year of college. So back when I was like 19, right? 19 to 20-ish. And it was super cute and I really liked it. The medium was bad and I wasn't jiving with it, so I didn't commit to finishing it. And I think that I'm at a point where I am able to push past being quote unquote defeated by a medium to a point where I could be successful and actually push myself to a point where I like the final product. So I'm thinking that it would be very befitting of me to kind of go through the process of reformatting that comic and actually drawing Hypnos and Thanatos' childhood a little bit more, exploring the characters a touch further. I think I want to do a illustration little comic thing about their reunion as brothers. I do have a temporary kind of emotional family feud kind of thing in my plot line that broke them apart a little bit, and they reunite through visiting their mother's garden. So I do kind of want to illustrate that one of these days very soon. And since my MFA has started and I have a teacher who is so stoked about the concept of me exploring my God-themed original characters, I'm really, really, really into kind of actually committing to it now. And so with that, I think that I'm going to be spending my 2 months of summer that are in my MFA. I have a June and a July residency to further exploring my characters, creating solid illustrations of them. I have solid illustrations of my OC Vivian, Eris. I have one kind of good illustration of my OC Unknown. So I think I might do a proper kind of character exploration of that OC at some point, but I do want to start kind of compartmentalizing and going through the process of seeing exactly how all of these characters fit into the universe to the extent that I want them to, how I want to explain God characters and non-God characters, immortality, things like that. I do have a general kind of tendency to create sub-universes within one given universe, and because of that, quite a few of my characters kind of get treated as interplanetary relationships, or kind of as not existing within necessarily the same planet. I tend to try and think about my universes and everything as a complete solar system where they all kind of coexist through a almost like space-like system. I don't even know how to describe it. This sounds so stupid, but I'm just like, but I want them all to exist in the same world and interact, so I need a reason. So it's a sci-fi space system that connects planets of gods. Sounds so stupid when I say it out loud, but I generally kind of treat the situationship where Eris possessed and regained a new body, Vivian became immortal, and Nameless basically became a sentient corpse. I generally treat them as part of what I call like this industrial complex that's responsible for managing kind of the magic systems and mitigating issues between different planets of gods. You know, it sounds so cool in my head and it sounds so dumb out loud, but that's generally how I kind of make my characters coexist. And so now I need to make the actual ultimate decision, I think, to an extent of if I want to try and separate these into multiple storylines or if I do want my gods to coexist in a more Rick Riordan kind of way where we did see a crossover, multiple crossovers between his Red Pyramid, Magnus Chase, and Percy Jackson series where the Norse, the Greek, and the Egyptian gods are all kind of coexisting and managing their own parts of this broader world and kind of thing, right? And so I do think I kind of need to make that decision, and I'm leaning more towards a kind of universe thing where, not universe thing, but where they all coexist because I do want Loki and Hypnos and Thanatos and Eris to all engage with each other and have those kind of kind of cultural discussions, and I want to be able to have some of them be more naive to different cultures than another. And I like the idea of Vivian being responsible for being kind of the gateway between the gods and the younger characters like Eris, who doesn't remember their time as a god but contains some of the similar powers, and Nameless, who has much of her memory contained. She still has a lot of it, but not all of it. Their kind of their youth, their kind of Gen Z millennial sort of existence. Vivian being a human who is immortal and gone through this for quite a few years since his scientific accident, and then these multi-thousand-year-old gods who are just like, what is an iPhone? Sorry, can you explain Tumblr to me? What is a phone call? What are these concoctions of foods that you creatures are consuming? Excuse me? What is this? I want all of these relationships to be had, and I like the idea of the Greek and the Norse existing simultaneously, but having either not interacted as much or not culturally explored each other quite a whole lot, and then having to argue about if Norse myth is accurate or if Greek myth is accurate, and then bullying each other about these stories that humans have come up with, right? And going through the process of, well, did you actually do this or not? And being like, come on, bro, you might as well have been there. It was only like 300 years ago. I can't believe you haven't heard the real deal. And everyone's like, nah, bro, I think you're lying, you know? I want to be able to engage in those kind of goofy comics, and it works best if all of my characters exist on the same planet from the jump, right? So I am very excited to make that kind of decision and then get to kind of further explore my characters with the help of my MFA kind of instructors and their guidance and all of that fun stuff. So I obviously love the exploration and the reimagining of Greek tales and Norse tales. I love when people take myth and they bring it back to life, they expand upon it, they further explore these ideas that came from a different version of us as a society. Like the concept of what we relied on for our worship and our kind of way of living, our morals, our understanding of the world. While I am not religious personally, I find it deeply interesting. I really like seeing how religion has evolved over time, how different cultures have fallen away from it, and the way that we use it to kind of explain the reality of the world to ourselves. That sort of stuff is really interesting to me. And so when it comes to something like Greek and Norse myth, Egyptian myth, all of the above, every mythology, whilst these more kind of European ones are what I'm more familiar with. The Greek, the Roman, well, the Egyptian I'm a bit more familiar with than others, and then the Norse. Those are the four that I am the most familiar with. I'm not very strong in my Japanese myth or any sort of Asian, East Asian countries, anything like that. I'm not super familiar with Irish, Scandinavian, most Scandinavian countries. So I'm really confined to these four. However, I do want to explore it more throughout kind of my adulthood and find more novels that kind of make learning about it and discussing it more fun. I really should look into Rick Riordan's kind of what is it? He like does the like Rick Riordan kind of like verified thing where he helps promote smaller authors, do similar stuff to his Percy Jackson series. I know Aru Shah, I believe, is about Indian myth, so stuff like that. And I think that's really interesting, and I do want to read more books like that now that I'm kind of getting back into my kind of deriving pleasure from reading like large novels again. So, that's something that I really want to do and be able to expand my understanding and bring more characters from here and there. I enjoy Records of Ragnarok as a concept. I think it's super interesting, and I think it's a very fun way of bringing all of the gods from all of these religions into one environment, right? And I do very much like seeing all these different character designs. So I obviously don't think that it is necessarily overdone per se, but I do think that we're kind of losing a little bit more of the fun that can be had with it the more we reiterate it and confine it to just one mythology. The more books that come out and the more times people do just a Greek retelling or just a Roman, just a Norse retelling, the more I want to be able to not confine, to bring these environments together so that I at least am creating a dynamic that is interesting to me in a way where I know that I'm not just perceiving things and rehashing stuff that has already been done a lot in the media. I don't consume a lot of media, to be honest, when it comes to like actual like novels and stuff like that. I read a lot of books, but my genre is a bit more the psychological horror, and so I never actually finished Lore Olympus. It wasn't really my jam personally, and I know there's been a lot of Hades and Persephone retellings over the years, and Hades and Persephone adjacent stuff, and so I really do like the Song of Achilles, things like that. I think they're really good. I'm scared that I will just kind of rehash stuff that I've already consumed without realizing it. And that I will let it kind of taint how far I want to go with my material or how I want to tell the story. And so, striking the balance between consuming media and having the most eclectic and well thought out view that I can, but also not letting myself get lost to one particular version of the tale and allowing myself to treat these characters like mine and try and have some level of myth within it, but also find a way to make it my own without kind of letting myself get overwashed by other people's ideas is something I want to do. And I think that having multiple myths to work with to format and structure my concept is going to help me stray away from being unoriginal in the way I approach it. I feel like I don't have the best memory, and so I'm always very paranoid that I won't recall where I got an idea from, and I will kind of fall into the trap of being unoriginal. And so I want to avoid that. And I think the way for me to do that the most effectively is to have as much source material that I can to play with to kind of define these relationships and see how I want to approach it, because Records of Ragnarok has like hundreds of gods in their pantheon that are existing there. They chose very specific ones and very specific humans from history to fight on the human side. But they could have gone a lot of different ways, and there's a lot of different potential and viability within having so many gods to choose from and where they want to focus their myth, or kind of what tales they want to bring to light and whose story they want to give a background to. And I think that having that much variety will allow me to have a lot to kind of fall back on when I get stuck and I need help formulating an idea. I can go back to myth and I can go through the different cultures that I'm kind of creating characters around and formulate my ideas that way and pull from this one and find a reason within my universe why it would suit the lore, or kind of how I can merge the lores of different cultures. I say them like they're very, very different cultures. Greek and Roman, well, not the most different, to be honest, but being able to kind of take these different myths and find ways to kind of bring them and concentrate them into my plot I think it gives me a lot of ways that I can give myself outs if I write into a corner, which I guess kind of is just proving that I'm really not a good writer, but I'm more of an artist than a writer. And while I do enjoy writing, I care more about being able to create stories that don't create conflict and confusion for the people who want to enjoy my art and a narrative with it than I am trying to create a more fundamental novel or anything of that nature, right? I'm not trying to write a 400-page book. I'm trying to illustrate, or I'm not trying to do anything yet, but I'm hoping to illustrate stories and create characters where you can see some of the myth and see some of that inspiration, understand where I'm going with it, and enjoy it, and like where I'm kind of going with my ideas, or at least understand how I got there, right? And let me take you along for this kind of artistic ride. And so that's really what I'm hoping to do with my future art, at least throughout my MFA. I'm hoping to really be able to take you guys on a journey of me kind of formatting my own universe and expanding the pantheon of my characters, or expanding the relationships that exist, and giving you guys broader insight into the characters that I create, both those that are meant to be from the myth itself and those who are from my own kind of base plot line of the industrial complex that I've never explained on my channel, which is great. But this is characters like Vivian and I'm totally blanking. Nameless. Sorry. I guess I just got a comment on my typography video talking about why they don't like Helvetica, and I'm like, same. And I totally spaced out. Which, by the way, off topic, thanks for all the love on the typography video, even though it was filmed in the jankiest, worst way possible. I really appreciate it, guys. Seriously. You guys are awesome. But, back to what I was discussing. Characters like Vivian and Nameless, who are undead and immortal humans, oppositely, because Vivian's the immortal and Nameless is the undead one. And kind of the exploration of them and how they fit into this world of gods is kind of, I guess, to kind of give a framework for how to compare these the most. They're kind of my idea and my way of creating a god, or demigod, I mean. They're kind of the closest to a demigod that I have within my realm. They're not fully human, they're definitely not gods, there's something in between that exists, right? And with that, I do really want to explore them more and find how they fit into the universe a bit more effectively. I think by expanding the universe, and actually trying to create a fundamental something, wow, I talk so dumbly, a fundamental, like, baseline for all of this stuff that's in my brain. I can also kind of create more dryads, and that can be kind of an explanation or something for those photosynthetic creatures, original creatures that I was making, that are like have photosynthetic skin, and they're like zombies that are like sentient plants basically. They can be kind of how I approach dryads to an extent. And then I am kind of thinking about doing something like that with Eurydice. I'm kind of curious. I do kind of want her to grow plants out of her body, but I'm 50-50. You know, I'm really trying to think of how I want to formulate myth and whatnot. Maybe Eurydice just kind of grows plants a lot. I'm not 100% on where I want to go with it quite yet, but I'm very, very excited to explore it. And so if there's anything that you guys are particularly thinking about my discussion and where I've kind of gone with this topic so far, do let me know. I'm very interested to hear your guys' opinion. You are the people who are consuming my art the most, you know, the people who enjoy what I make, like my art style and things of that nature. And so I very much value where you guys stand and your guys' thoughts on these kind of ideas on where to take my art and my practice and the type of stuff I create, because I am a very flexible creator and I like creating so much different type of art, and I like talking about so much different types of art, so many different types of art, that I understand if you guys don't particularly like this idea and it can remain a side project for me. You know what I mean? I create a lot. I don't do this for any sort of like view component. I very much enjoy when you guys view my content. I really like when more people see my work, but I'm not doing this exclusively for some sort of type of engagement. And so I also don't have an expectation that my videos are going to do well, and therefore I'm also not perturbed if, while this isn't something you guys are interested in, I post it sometimes, not as much, you know. I want you guys to be able to see and discuss the work that you want to see and discuss with me, right? Because I'm always going to be creating art. It's not something I'm ever going to stop doing. I'm always going to be working in my sketchbook to some extent. I'm always going to be cleaning my desk, going through art books. I'm always going to have something artistic to talk about. Even in my worst health points, I find a way to be creative, or I have a thought or an opinion or something to discuss about artistic stuff, right? And so with that, I want to be able to focus what I put here on what you guys enjoy, because it's going to get made either way. Whether or not you guys see it is more so just whether or not you guys want to see it, and therefore encourage me to discuss it, right? So that's kind of where I stand on it. In terms of how Eurydice is coming along, because I think we've made some hefty progress, I'm really, really liking her. I honestly, at the start of this video, I was really close to saying, let's just leave her here. And when I say that I just like said, nah, just a little bit more, and then dedicated another probably hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, if you count where I'm working off screen, and didn't like, I had to cut it out because my hand was just working on something that wasn't visible. All of that, like, it was just rendering. It was just layering upon layering, kind of just exploring stuff. And I think that that's kind of a large component of what makes art so pleasurable for me and so fun to indulge in this format, is I don't know what I'm doing, and it's all kind of this intuitive process where I'm trying to push it until it looks good, right? I mean, I put a picture of what this looked like at the beginning. I was going to leave it like that. I was going to say that this is just one of those scratch pages that you throw away and you never look at and you don't care about, you know, bad drawing day, bad art day, something like that, right? And, you know, I just kept going. I kept coming back to it. I just felt very enticed to keep layering more color. And that's something that's so enjoyable about a more hyper pop art style, is I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't understand color theory particularly well. It's not something I'm super familiar with, honestly. I understand complementary, tertiary colors. I understand all of that, but I don't actually know how to design a good color palette. I'm wholly reliant and trusting of my medium to work in a way, like the pre-curated colors that I have, to work in a way most of the time where it is going to look good. I trust that what I have will look good enough together, or I will be able to hopefully tell that it looks so bad together that I can cop out before it's too late or cover it up, right? You know, I have some red on here. I thought the red was awful at first. It kind of works. It looks better now, and it's kind of just an entire simulation of trust the process and getting creative. So, I've just really, really enjoyed the act of forcing myself to sit down and really push myself to keep working at something until I feel satisfied with it. Even if it's not something that I ever intend to show and present to the light of day, forcing myself to sit down and deconstruct real time why I might not like something and then figure out how to fix it has been something that's been relatively instrumental in me understanding painting as a material, but also kind of bettering my anatomy. Because as I sit down and I chunk out stuff and paint, I am not using a pencil, I am not relying on a sketch, and I'm relying on my instinct to tell me when something looks funky. And I found that that's been very beneficial to forcing me to really critically think, why does this look wrong to me? And then spend the time sitting down and trying to identify the issue, which has been it's been a really good exercise. I don't know how else to put it. Anatomy is not my strongest point, which is weird to say because character design and illustration is something that is so monumental to the type of art that I create, but it is not necessarily my strongest component, right? I think that my strongest component is kind of a cohesion. My character design is kind of really making sense. Strong, bold line work. More so the items that come together to create the character and not necessarily their proportions themselves is where my strengths kind of lie. And so by forcing myself to sit down and kind of deconstruct my understanding and be like, that looks wrong, I need to fix it, and going over it in paint and having to re-carve out the actual shape has been really, really helpful. I think that I'm a huge proponent of using pencil and playing with pencil and utilizing graphite and charcoal and all of that. It's very important to a lot of fundamentals, but there's also something to be said about the inability to erase, right? You see those kind of I do digital art, no erase challenges, and the reason things like that are so interesting is because it is a medium that is so liberal in its ability to be undone, right? And painting, while so easily covered up and redone and reshaped, isn't one of those mediums that we think of as reversible the same way graphite and digital art is. And so the way you have to actually think through the process of how you erase in paint is by going over it and recarving it out. Whereas you can erase, you can sketch over, and you can kind of completely start over with pencil in a way that is more implicitly easier. You can always paint over a canvas, and you can always start completely over. I think. I can't think of any varnishes or anything that would make painting over it again near impossible. You can always do it, but we treat it like it's so much more work. And I think the reason we do that as a group, as a society, thinking of painting as so much more work than graphite, is because it takes longer to dry and people generally work a lot bigger in paintings inherently than they do graphite. I can't think of any other reason we treat paint as irreversible. But you can just paint over it. I did it multiple times, and I'm not an expert. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just going with the flow. And I'm not working with a medium that's even good for painting over, to be honest. Like, this is a pretty tacky paint pen brand that I'm using. I don't even know the name off the top of my head, but it's pretty tacky. There's a very slick texture to it. It's highly reflective. I'll try to remember to put a picture of just how reflective this paint is if you have it in direct sunlight. It's disgusting. It's really, really bad. So, it's pretty tacky. It is kind of hard to layer over. You have to put a couple of bases down before you're working with something good again. And you're mostly, honestly, you'll be going over this in paint, right? Wow, sometimes watching my own hand, I feel like I'm watching doubt happen in real life. Whoa. But you'll be going over something in paint, it'll be completely dry, and the paint will reactivate the paint and just smear it and like carve into it. Sometimes it won't reactivate. The nib will be so sharp it just carves away the paint. It's a weird paint pen to work with, but you can cover it. It's not impossible. And so that's been something that I've really enjoyed kind of processing, going through the exploration of, and I don't know. I feel like I'm challenging myself to rethink about the mediums that I have and haven't worked with and give them greater opportunity and consideration in my life as something I might want to explore more in the future. Wow, you don't need me to show you how reflective. That is real intense light reflection in unnatural lighting. But I want to discuss more how I go over the process of actually chunking away and sculpting, painting, and how I kind of compartmentalize it. Because I don't know what I'm doing, so I want to talk about what I do even though I don't know, right? So let's get into that real quick. I not only have little experience with paint, but I lack any sort of formal training with paint. So, and I'm using a material specifically more often than not that does not have much mixing capability. Sure, I could dump these out into a palette. I can pump them out into a palette and mix and bring out a brush from there. But with my condition, holding paintbrushes is generally pretty uncomfortable. And when I'm creating, one of the roadblocks I have that prevents me from being interested in painting is that I don't have much passion for having to think critically to achieve what I want. I like the ease of being able to look at the color that is already in front of me and react within the moment and make a decision there. I find that when I have to think about mixing a color, I generally don't find that I enjoy or have much of an interest in creating. I like to have pre-established colors or to layer them until I get what I want. Putting the tips of the paint pens together, markers together, or layering colored pencil to get the effect I want, highlighter, other colors, things like that. I don't actually want to mix it. And so, one thing that I've learned is that when you don't have a mid-tone that you want, or you're trying to achieve a certain color, but you don't necessarily have a lot of colors that will help it blend, putting dots down and little dashes is a super effective way of kind of tricking the mind into thinking that there is a mid-tone that doesn't exist. Because when we're standing far away, our eyes kind of blur it together and we kind of trick ourselves into seeing them almost in a mixed capacity. So if you squint your eyes, you'll see it more like a mid-tone if the dashes are well placed. Mine aren't super well placed. I do this a lot in my digital painting because it's so effective for helping to create an effect that doesn't force me to blend a whole lot. I don't like a super painterly effect to my digital painting where you can see brush strokes every single time. I'm kind of 50-50 about it. I change my mind about it depending on the piece, but I very much like the way that dots look, and I'm trying to think of what it's called, but I like the way the dots look. I like the texture they provide, the effect they have, and they look so inherently artistic. And I think that's one thing about art for me that I'm really, really into. I don't enjoy creating art that tries to trick you into thinking that it's real. I'm not a huge realism person. I have a lot of like respect for people who can do it. I don't have that capacity and that understanding or that level of patience. But I enjoy art that looks very, very explicitly like art. Um, and so realism isn't really my thing, so I very much like the effect that those hex dots cause. They look so not like they're even trying to convince you that we're looking at something that's supposed to be 100% real, right? And I love that about it. And so, most of my dots and dashes within the hair were me trying to create a sense of depth that I didn't really do super effectively. However, I also like the way it looks. I like the way that the dots and the layering creates the sensation and the idea of um, building upon what's already there. And it's kind of like physically creating a depth, right? When I lay down my darker colors, because I'm working in paint pen and I can work dark to light, I have the ability to just outright say, okay, well, I want more depth here. I want this to stand out more, and continue getting lighter and lighter with the color, which is something that greatly appeals to me. I really, really like it. Um, so that's another component of why the dots are really, really fascinating for me. And you can always go back and add more depth later. However, I was finding the more I was going through this piece that it just does not have the sense of depth that the color black creates. I haven't used any black aside from the eyelashes up to this point in the video. And so, well, I'm bringing out my black pen now to start working on creating proper black, right? My other pen, this kind of thicker, I can't think of what it's called, it's like the felt tip one. That's actually brown, not black. So, I was using brown to try and create that black sense of depth that I really, really like. Line art is something that I have such an extreme affinity for, but it wasn't quite getting where I wanted it to go, so I do end up going through and lining accordingly to create the depth that I truly want and causing those effects that I really like. I don't think that I have an understanding of painting and working in a paint-based medium to be able to truly get exactly what I want without a black, which is fine with me. I love the way black looks. I know some people really prefer using other colors, not quite using black because it blends better, it looks more realistic. That I guess ties into the original point. I don't have a script, so I didn't think it through. But it does kind of detract from the idea that it is not right. Not even trying to be realistic. Not that anyone would ever look at this and think I was going for realism. However, I like black. I like the way it looks, and I don't have much of a mind for the concept that it is kind of detracting and it doesn't create that realistic sense to it. So I do end up adding a lot more black and browns throughout, and I really, really like it. One thing, however, that was kind of a trouble with this piece is that the paint I'm working with does not react kindly to colored pencil. You can't really blend it over. It ends up with a more scattered, kind of like you're working with Crayola kind of feeling. It's great if you build it, but like if you're just gonna work with one layer, it looks really, really sparse, not super great. And I was having a hard time getting those general textures that I really, really like. So, lesson learned, colored pencil on these pens in particular ends up creating a kind of muddy feeling. I'm not entirely sure how colored pencils usually work out on paint. I'm not super familiar with it, so I do have to do more experimenting with it. I think that gouache has a generally more, what would it be? Kind of a matte texture to it that grips to the colored pencil a lot better. This is a very glossy, kind of smooth paint. I think Poscas are also generally a lot more textured, but I'm relying more so on the color palette that I have with the other paints that I have. I think that Poscas, while really lovely, don't have the type of colors that I really want to work with or enjoy working with. They have a lot of standard colors, they have a lot of primaries, kind of classic colors that you would get in a beginner paint set, but I'm really wanting, as someone who once again does not mix colors, I'm really wanting those super soft pastel-y blues that you would need to mix with a like a white. Oh, take a white to the blue, probably add a touch of yellow or green in there just to get it a little bit more um towards that aqua center. But aqua center, wow, I'm so intelligent. I have such a way with words, guys. But kind of that more aqua kind of tone. I think that Poscas are generally too rich and too vibrant for me. And that detracts from creating the kind of softness that I very much value in my art, right? It's something that I very much want it to look. I don't want to rely on those primaries. And so I generally do find that I do end up with my painting drawings to looking more glossy, feeling more glossy, and really just they don't take the colored pencil well, and I haven't found a solution to it because this paint is so, I don't know if it's cheap, I don't know if it's fragile, I'm not super familiar with paint again, so I'm not 100% sure. I don't honestly know if it's the quality of the paint itself, or I think this might be an oil paint pen, perhaps. I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to double check. I'll put it in the comments if so, but it comments description. So I did. It's super glossy and super easy to take away from itself. Like if I press too hard with a different one of the pens, it will start carving into the pre-existing paint no matter how long I've left it drying. And so I'm not 100. Can you hear the construction that's happening on my property right now? Jeez. But I hope you can. Sounds like there's someone on my roof. But it just is a little bit harder to work with. I'm not entirely sure what it is. I definitely have to get more experience and work with it a lot more to reach a proper conclusion. I'm not anti-paint. I do love working with paints, and I very much like the ability they provide me to work from dark to light and to not have to think at all about what color I need to lay first because I can't go back, right? However, I think that markers are ultimately much more the medium that I am best suited for, or that I kind of work the best in, because I need that kind of colored pencil to help me further the depth of my work, right? And I also put paint over my marker illustrations, and so I do kind of cheat out that kind of having to work light to dark when you can layer paint over it. I generally am not sure. As for the actual background of the piece, I didn't have any plans whatsoever throughout the entire process, but those other paint pens, the like T5 I believe, they are really dry and you have to kind of reactivate them every time for the most part. I don't know if it's how I store them or what. I store them on their side. And so I didn't have any paper I wanted to reactivate them on. Couldn't go to a different sketchbook page because I really wanted to leave the Hypnos page clean alone. And so I just continued reactivating them on the background of the actual piece around Eurydice. And it got to the point where it was beginning to take shape and look relatively nice, and so I continued to add dots here and there, reactivate unnecessary throughout the process, or kind of just get the pens juicier than they necessarily needed to be. And I found that it was just genuinely a really fun background, and so I decided to keep it. I decided that it really worked with the overall kind of feeling I was giving. It had that creativity that I want to assign to Eurydice. As a character, I want her to be a creative, and I want her to have a kind of an in touch with nature, love for color, love for these things, and so I think it really worked. Although it does kind of make it hard, even after I add the black pen, to tell her hair apart from the background. She kind of blends in a little bit more than I wanted to, even with the additions of the brown and black, but it's not horrible. I think that that's something to keep in mind for the future, and to kind of just activate the greens further away from the character themselves if I ever do something like this again, so that the character can pop off a bit better. Work on activating, the opposite of green is red. Work on activating kind of reds and oranges around the hair more, or the character itself if I'm working with a color like green next time, and the green further out so that it feels more like a cohesion thing, but that character is really popping off of what's directly around them. Even with the black, they kind of get lost. I don't hate it though, I think it's kind of nice. And this is once again something that was supposed to just be a sketchbook thrashing page. I mean, I really wasn't expecting to or anticipating actually committing to this and making a proper illustration. This was supposed to just be me covering up a drawing I didn't like, and I mean, basically I was supposed to restart with a Hypnos drawing. It just kind of got carried away from me, and I never really kind of came back to the original plan. I just kept building and building and building until I got to where I am. So I really didn't think any of this through, and so I'm not mad about the background kind of swallowing Eurydice and kind of taking away from her as a standalone character. I do add more components really quickly. I scribble them in whilst fixing what I call quote unquote a mistake. It's not a mistake, it looks fine now. Probably didn't even notice, and honestly my partner liked it better the original way, so that's fine, but we'll get to that momentarily. But as I was adding the dots and I was hatching along the thicker lines and kind of just slowly chunking away at adding darkness to the hair, I was really starting to fall in love with this as a proper drawing for Eurydice. At this point, actually, in the creative process, this was no character in particular. I was kind of leaning towards Medusa, as I mentioned earlier, but I didn't actually make the decision to kind of focus this as a design for Eurydice, and I didn't decide that I want to continue with this design for my kind of Greek tellings and maybe comics in the future until after I was basically finished with the entire thing. I was on day 2 of this drawing when I had the discussion with my MFA professor, and I didn't actually process the information accordingly until I was almost all the way done with this. You know, I was like, okay, I'm going to finish this drawing and then I'm going to start thinking about what I'm going to do for my month-long art residency sort of thing, right? And so throughout it, I was really not thinking about this as a character and this as anything in particular. And so I am very, very satisfied with overall how the creative process brought me to something really, really strong that I really like, right? Because I had no intentions and I had no desires with this character in particular, she wasn't necessarily going to exist beyond the sketchbook page. I'm very, very happy with where my creative process and my just casual building of colors actually brought me. and the kind of cathartic commitment to not caring and not thinking about what I'm designing is something that I really want to work on more, because I do think I get in my head when I'm working on these myths, because I don't want people to feel completely like I'm throwing away mythology for fun, kooky designs, right? And so, with that, I do think that I want to get a little bit better at just trusting my instincts and seeing where they take me. I don't think it hurts to just continue to add things that you think are cool to a drawing for the sake of enjoying the artistic process and for the sake of enjoying where your design is taking you, right? I'm very, very satisfied with this, and I think that there's something to be said about being able to take yourself on a journey of just letting it happen. And I think that's something that paint in particular does really, really wonderfully, because you can continue to go over everything. You are never committing to one thing in particular. Um, you can continue to build and reshape what you already have until it gets to the point that you are most satisfied with. I wanted to take a moment in this video, regardless of where I put this part, to discuss the recent actions of Meta, so that's Facebook and Instagram, and I guess therefore Threads. And I just wanted to say that there are a lot of tutorials out there on how to opt out of the AI policy in the event that it's going through, and it's going through in your country. To my understanding, I'm in the US, West Coast US. To my understanding, the policy isn't taking effect in the US and Canada yet. So people in the US and Canada do not have the ability to opt out of the AI data policy that is coming to Meta. But if you are in any of those other countries, I know I have people in those other countries. If you're watching this and you're in somewhere like Europe, please take the time to opt out of the AI feature that will be selling your data on selling or giving out your data for AI training purposes on any and all platforms that you have, new or old. And this is something that I wanted to ask of people because while I am an artist and I don't want AI being trained off of my art, my actual biggest concern about the AI privacy policy, AI training thing that Meta is doing is that there are a lot of older people on Facebook and a lot of kind of like mommy vloggers, family content creators, and young people on Instagram. Since I think you only have to be 13 to have an account. And so I know that a lot of people are publishing and putting out what is carefree, normal content of them, their face, just selfies, childish things like that. People have grandparents on Facebook that are posting their baby photos and life events, and it's all super innocent. And a lot of these accounts that people make are for your family to just stay in touch and stuff across the country and stuff of that nature, um, or across the world. And so I am concerned, and I am particularly concerned about people who are just posting stuff about their families, especially people who are generally less tech literate, which is the older generations. Not that all old people are illiterate with tech. They're just a little bit more vulnerable to these situations on average. I am worried about people who have baby photos posted by family members and that being used to sell AI. It is a really, really disgusting topic and hard topic to talk about what people do with AI in terms of children, and so I will not be going into it. I just respectfully ask, if you have people in your life and you're not in the US and Canada, if you have the option to opt out, please follow the tutorials to keep yourself, your family, and your data and personal information safe. If you've ever divulged super personal information in any of your posts that you do not want AI being trained off of, do change or archive that as soon as possible for safety. I believe the policy takes effect at the end of June. I think it was June 26th. And I have personally, because I can't opt out yet, I am personally beginning to glaze my artwork before I post it on any social media sites. I am thinking about starting to nightshade and glaze. So all of my work from here on out that I'm posting in a flat content, aside from my website, will be glazed. YouTube, I am not doing that. I don't even think you can glaze videos. So if my art ever looks a little bit weird, I don't know how glaze affects it yet. I haven't glazed anything yet. From video to that is going to be why. Obviously I create my own work. I post it all on YouTube. Obviously I'm a real artist. I create my work and all of that jazz. So, I know that it's obvious that I have ownership of my work. I'm not concerned about people trying to steal my work and then say that I'm not the creator of it. I do not want AI being trained off of my art, because I believe that no matter how big or how small an artist is, that they deserve to be compensated for their work. And so I know some people are saying that AI is just an advancement of the future and that we shouldn't be so scared of it. I am not scared. I am morally against stealing people's work, their data, their information, everything of that nature. And so, until I am paid to give my art to AI, I am wholly against it in every facet. Stealing people's data, particularly those who are under the age of 18 on Meta for AI training purposes, I hope will be illegal, made illegal. I hope that there will be no stealing of that data. I hope that the US and Canada will be able to legally prevent this from happening for other countries where this is taking effect. Please, if possible, if there are petitions, anything of that nature, please do sign it. We should protect the children of our planet, especially on the internet, especially a place as dangerous as this, especially a place where cyberbullying is prevalent. We need to protect the younger generations who are unaware of what's happening and the older generations who might not have the social kind of sphere necessary to know about this. And so I know this is kind of a damper on this video and a kind of a not cool topic to have to talk about, but I found out about the meta stuff this week, and I, along with other artists, are working very hard to publicize the information to opt out when necessary. I am sharing it on my feeds when I encounter it and stuff of that nature. Please keep yourself safe and your data safe and your information safe. We deserve and we should have a right, regardless of what country you're in. I know America is very for the people, free the people, autonomy, democracy, stuff like that. Regardless of what country you live in and your politics and where you land on the spectrum, I don't care if you are my worst enemy. You shouldn't have your private information stolen to train something without your explicit consent and your explicit knowledge of what it will be used to do in the future, right? I have different opinions, on things like police investigations, like getting people's data for that. When it comes to just taking our data to train a machine and we are not given explicit information on what is going to be done with this, why they want it, all of that stuff, and we are not being compensated or properly vetted for if this is even safe or ethical to do, I do not support it. And so I haven't completely left Instagram. I will probably be engaging in the anti-meta Mondays where you just don't go on any meta platforms on Mondays. I basically don't go on Instagram at all. I don't even have a Facebook account. And then additionally, I don't really use Threads a whole lot. I check in. I like to scroll. I don't post a lot. So I'm not going to really have a hard time with that. However, if you guys ever need to reach out to me, on Instagram, Threads, or Instagram or Threads, just know I might not respond on Mondays because it's not hard for me to say no to Instagram and get off of Instagram. I have a time limit on it, so I don't spend a lot of time on it. So, if you ever try to reach out to me on any of those platforms, I will probably be unreachable on Mondays. I have a Tumblr account. Tumblr has it set up so that you can very easily set your blog to not have your data stolen. So I am on Tumblr now. I have my Ko-fi that I have always had. And you can just comment there. It's all free to access the information, my public stuff, all that. Feel free to comment on any videos. If you can comment on videos you've never commented on before, I am more likely to get notified by YouTube or like a community post. That would help if you ever need to reach me for any reason. I don't know why any of you would. I do have one person who likes to talk to me in my Instagram DMs. They are an absolute sweetheart. If I don't get back to you on a Monday, that is why. And also thank you for always being like super sweet and asking me about the stuff I talk about in my video. It makes me feel super great. But yeah, I just really ask that you all take the effort to help the people in your life stay safe because, I do not believe in stealing people's baby photos or child photos or life events. I'm morally against posting people without their consent, and I don't really have positive feelings about posting baby photos in general. But however, I understand that that is something that people are going to continue to do, and that most people don't realize how dangerous the internet is. So I can't be too hard on people for that, especially people who just don't know. We are not the most literate planet on the total set of dangers that can happen on the internet. There's a lot of stuff that we don't know. There's a lot of stuff that I don't know, that I genuinely have no idea what can happen on the internet because I am ignorant and not exposed to that reality, right? I am very aware of the AI situation, and I believe we should all be compensated for any data that is taken. I don't believe in just taking stuff from people. And I do not believe that this is something that should be added to a privacy policy without giving people the full information of what is going to happen with it. So if you have the ability to opt out in your country, please do, or at least go through your profile and make sure there's nothing that you are worried about being given to AI. Please, I want everyone to stay safe and be fully informed of what is happening with their data. So, that's what this is about. If you love AI and you're a huge AI person, not entirely sure why you're watching an art channel if you're like AI is God, but if you're a huge AI person, please just make sure that the information that you are letting AI take is stuff you're comfortable having in AI, right? We all should be safe online, and so I just want to put that in here. Please be safe, okay? I want everybody to not be at risk, and the internet is a scary place. With that depressing topic out of the way and me doing my part to help spread the word, I want to end on a more positive note. So I want to just briefly talk about that quote-unquote mistake that I made. I don't think it's actually a mistake. It was more so a style preference. I stepped away from the drawing for a little while. You'll see the change I make soon. I stepped away from the drawing for a little while, and I was just finding that Eurydice's lips were looking a little bit too close to her nose and just smaller than I generally like to draw mouths. I generally really like to give characters pretty large lips. And part of that's because I just really, really like the way that it fills the face. I don't know why I get so, personally anxious about having, space at the bottom. I think it's because, I don't know how to, within my style, define the chin. The lips kind of protrude just a teeny bit, and then there's that, gap. And I kind of symbolize that with, a triangle or, curling lines going down away from the lip to kind of symbolize that gap. But I don't really know how to indicate a chin. and I don't know how to like spatially put the chin, and so I feel like I just really like to put big lips to fill in that gap as much as possible so I don't have to kind of indicate to people who are looking at my art that there is a chin present, which is probably really stupid the more I think about it, but I just get like artistically I don't know how to do it. So I was thinking the lips were looking a little bit small for my taste, which isn't a bad thing. I think she looks really, really good as she is. And had I never changed it, I don't think I'd care at all. Like, she looks really, really good as she stands. But I did paint over her bottom lip. I think just her bottom lip. No, I painted over her full lips and I did make them a bit bigger and I did kind of create a little bit more space away from the nose. Her mouth looks a little bit crooked currently, and that's because I was trying to give her a smirk, so I do add some lines to help indicate that that is supposed to be an upturned kind of point of her mouth. One thing that I think my style does kind of lack is the indicators of expressions that are more minuscule to the face. Smile lines, the lines that appear between the brows when they're furrowed. I will move where the eyebrows are, but I generally just forget to put the additional lines that occur on the face when you're trying to indicate a change in expression. I'm not really good at adding the crinkles in the corner of eyes either when people are like really smiling or squinting and things like that. And it's something that I need to get better with. And if you can hear the construction and the dog whining, I'm sorry. Our roofs got damaged and they are being cleaned off by some dude down the street. So there's not much I could do about it currently. So I did just go out of my way. It took about 15 minutes to paint over the mouth, let it dry a bit, and then fix them and redefine all of the lines. And so I do just have a brief little kind of overview that will be playing during the outro bit. I didn't film enough of going over it for me to kind of explain it whilst I was simultaneously showing it, but I will be putting like a finished illustration up so you guys can see it still on the screen. I just really wanted to kind of articulate and explain what happened verbally, right? So with all of that being said, I do think we're kind of getting to the point where I need to start giving my outro and expressing my gratitude for you guys sitting all the way through this video. I really do appreciate everybody who takes their time to sit with me once a week and enjoy my content and enjoy being creative with me. Oh, and I added gold gilded Greek stuff, I swear. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, wherever you are. Like if you like, dislike if you dislike, subscribe if you want to see more of my content. Now I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, wherever you are. And with all of that being said, bye-bye.